The three secrets of Fatima consist of a series of apocalyptic visions. This is from Wikipedia. And prophecies, which were given to three young Portuguese shepherds, Lucia Santos, and her cousins, Jacinta and Francisco Morto, by a Marian apparition starting... Oh, see, it did start May 13th. The three children were visited by the Virgin Mary 6 times between May and October. Matter of fact, the only time they missed was because the police locked them up and said, "You lying little swine, we're not letting you out to go see the Virgin Mary." But the three children were visited 6 times, each on the 13th of May through October of 1917. And the apparition is now popularly known as Our Lady of Fatima. Now, according to Lucia, on July 13th, 1917, around noon, the Virgin entrusted the children with 3 secrets. 2 of the secrets were revealed in 1941 in a document written by Lucia at the request of Jose Alves Correa de Silva, Bishop of Leiria, to assist with the publication of a new edition of a book on Jacinta. And when asked by the bishop in 1943 to reveal the 3rd secret, Lucia struggled for a short period, being, quote, not yet convinced that God had clearly authorized her to act, unquote. However, in October 1943, the bishop ordered her to put it into writing. And Lucia then wrote the secret down and sealed it in a wax-sealed envelope not to be opened until 1960. But it will appear clearer. And the text of the 3rd secret was officially released because John the Navigator, John the 23rd, read the 3rd secret and wept and apparently fell off the papal throne in agony and despair because he was so shocked by what the secret was. So now the 3rd secret is officially released by John Paul II in the year 2000, although John Paul gives it to Cardinal Ratzinger, who later becomes Pope Benedict, who also was the puppet master behind... John Paul was from like 97, he was basically dead. It was like the papal version of Weekend at Bernie's. They would bring him up and, they'd have little strings on his arms. Hey, all you whups, get off of my lawn. What are you doing? And although some claim that it was not the entire secret revealed by Lucia, this is Ratzinger, by the way. Ratzinger came out in this desperate secret that Pope John the 23rd fell off the papal throne for, which had kept a secret since 1960. Ratzinger comes out and goes, oh, it's just about the guy who tried to shoot the Pope in May 13th of 1980. And the Pope's life, I'm not kidding, this is absolutely true. The Pope's life was saved by a Fatima medal that he was wearing around his neck. And the bullet lodged in the Fatima medal. And the Pope then donated the medal and the bullet to actually go to be mounted in the crown of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, as described by Sister Lucia of Fatima. Kind of odd. Although some claim that it was not the entire secret revealed by Lucia, despite repeated assertions from the Vatican. Anyway, according to various Catholic interpretations, the 3 secrets involve hell, World War I and World War II, and the 20th century persecutions of Christians, which is happening now, by the way. The most murdered and persecuted group of people on earth today are Christians. Christians in the Middle East, Christians here in the United States. And of the hundreds of alleged apparitions of the Catholic Church has investigated, only 12 have actually received ecclesiastical approval. 9 occurred between 1830 and 1933. Cultural anthropologist Victor and Edith Turner, who converted to Catholicism in 1958, have been interpreted by some to have at one time viewed the increase in Marian apparition cults as a post-industrial reaction to what they are calling, quote, a disenfranchised lower middle class to a rapidly changing culture. Okay, here's the first secret. In her 3rd memoir, written in 1941, Lucia said that the first secret, a vision of hell, was disclosed to the children on July 13th, 1917. Our Lady showed us, she says, Our Lady showed us a great sea of fire which seemed to be under the earth. Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form, like transparent burning embers, all blackened or burnished bronze, floating about in the conflagration, now raised into the air by the flames that issued from within themselves, together with great clouds of smoke, now falling back on every side like sparks in a huge fire. Sounds like all the people that voted for Hillary. Without weight or equilibrium, and amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us. and made us tremble with fear. The demons could not be distinguished by their terrifying and repulsive likeness to frightful and unknown animals, all black and transparent. This vision lasted but an instant, but how can we ever be grateful enough to our kind Heavenly Mother, who had already prepared us by promising in the first apparition to take us to heaven? Otherwise, I think we would have died of fear and terror. Okay, second secret was a statement that World War I would end. That's pretty easy to make. And along with a prediction of another world war during the reign of Pope Pius the 11th, should men continue offending God, and should Russia not convert to Christianity and the Holy Heart, Sacred Heart of Mary. The second half requests that Russia be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Virgin Mary. Now, this has been a big deal. The big deal was, and I'm pretty sure that the 1917 apparition said the same thing, but the whole point was, if at some point the Pope and the head of the Russian Orthodox Church were to somehow come together, or that the Pope were to travel to Moscow and somehow consecrate Russia. Now, this is something that the Russians have absolutely not allowed to happen. And you think, why? The Pope's such a nice guy, and he's Pope Francis, and he's like a Pope. Everybody's okay. Doesn't matter how nasty you do, or you do the butt sex. It's you're going to go to heaven anyway because you're a good person. It doesn't matter that you do the poopy sex and do the rump arranger thing and do the fudge packing. It doesn't matter. You're still going to heaven. So, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me, Jesus. When you see a night illuminated by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God that he is about to punish the world for its crimes by means of war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and of the Holy Father. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, this is Russia now, causing wars and persecutions of the Church, also Russia. The good will be martyred, the Holy Father will have much to suffer, various nations will be annihilated, and in the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she shall be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. Now, in 1925, Sister Lucia reported an apparition of the Virgin Mary at the convent of St. Dorothea the Pontevedra in Galicia. She said she was asked to convey the message of the first Saturday devotions. By her account, a subsequent vision of the child Jesus reiterated this request. In 1930, she wrote to her confessor that in 1929 she had a vision of both Mary and the Holy Trinity in which God asked for the consecration of Russia. God bless it. Oh, there they go. Those are the Russians out there. To the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary by the Pope in communion with all the bishops of the world. The message regarding the establishment of the devotion of the 5 first Saturdays is reminiscent of that reported by Margaret Mary Alcock in the 17th century, which led to the First Friday devotion. It is unlikely this message was conveyed to the Pope, but the Bishop of Lieria suggested that she write her memoirs in the event that she might reveal further details of the 1917 apparitions. In her third memoir, written in 1941, Sister Lucia recalled that at the apparition of July 13th, 1917, the Virgin Mary had first mentioned the consecration of Russia and said that she would return to give particulars. Skeptics have noted that the second prophecy was not disclosed until after August 1941, after World War II had already begun, and they've also questioned whether Mary in 1917 referred explicitly to Pope Pius XI, as Ambrogio Ratti did not choose that regnal name until after his election in 1922. Further, the European portion of World War II is generally held to have begun on September 1st of 1939, and by then, Pope Pius XII had succeeded Pope Pius XI. On January 25th, 1938, the New York Times reported the Aurora Borealis startles Europe. People flee in fear, call firemen. The celestial display, hey, sugar. Oh, okay, it's not even 4 o'clock yet. The celestial display was seen from Canada to Bermuda to Austria, from Austria to Scotland, and shortwave radio transmissions were shut down for almost 12 hours in Canada. Some proponents of the Fatima prophecies argue that the secret did not say that the war must begin in Europe, and during the pontificate of Pius the 11th, Japan had already invaded China in 1937, which is generally seen by historians of China and other parts of Asia as when the Second World War actually began, a view which also has qualified support from some Westerners. Now, the third secret, the one that John in 1960, Pope John fell off his chair reading. Sister Lucia chose not to disclose the third secret of her memoir in August of 1941. In 1943, Lucia fell seriously ill with influenza and pleurisy. Bishop Silva, visiting her on 15 September 43, suggested that she must write the third prophecy down to ensure that it would be recorded in the event of her death. Lucia was hesitant to do so. However, at the time she received the secret, she had heard Mary say not to reveal it, but because Carmelite obedience requires that orders from superiors be regarded as coming directly from God, she was in a quandary as to whose orders took precedence. Finally, in mid-October, Bishop Silva sent her a letter containing a direct order to record the secret, and Lucia obeyed. The third part of the secret was written down by order of His Excellency the Bishop of Liadia and the Most Holy Mother. On January 3rd, 1944, in June 1944, the sealed envelope containing the third secret was delivered to Silva, where it stayed until 57, when it was finally delivered to Rome. It was announced by Cardinal Angelo Sodana on May 13th, 2000, 83 years after the first apparition of the lady to the children in the Cova da Iria, that the third secret would finally be released. In his announcement, Cardinal Sodano implied that the secret was about the 20th century persecution of Christians that culminated in the failed Pope John Paul assassination attempt, 64th anniversary of the first apparition of the Lady Fatima. The text of the third secret, according to the Vatican, was published in June 26, 2000. And we'll get up to what the real secret is after this break. The third part of the secret revealed at the Cova di Iria Fatima on 13 July 1917. We saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him, with her right hand pointing to the earth, with her right from her right hand. I'm sorry. So she was radiating this rainbow colored splendor, as they were calling it. Then pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance! Penance! Penance!" And we saw an immense light, that is God, quote, something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it. A bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, men, and women, religious, going up a steep mountain, at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks, as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins. So they're talking about the Pope now. They're talking about not God, but the Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins, and half trembling with halting step, afflicted with pain and sorrow. He prayed for the souls of the corpses that he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain, now remember, there's corpses everywhere along this mountain. And there are some people that actually claim that it is a mountain of corpses. On his knees, at the foot of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. And in the same way, there died one after another the bishops, priests, men and women religious, and various lay people of different ranks and positions. Beneath the two arms of the cross, there were two angels, each with a crystal aspersorium. An aspersorium is an aspersorium. It's a liturgical implement. It's used to sprinkle holy water. You've seen it. They come and they sprinkle it on you. It's kind of like, knock, knock, who's there? John the Baptist, and then you squirt him in the face. It comes in two forms. There's a brush that's dipped in water, and then it's shaken over the congregation. There's also a silver ball on a stick, And a lot of people, they have sponges in them or internal reservoirs that dispense holy water when you shake them, when you bring them out. It's while others periodically you have to dip them. But an aspersorium, it's also called, the bucket is actually called an aspersorium. God, can you tell I was Catholic for a while? Because it's a holy bucket. You not just have the holy water, you have to have a holy bucket for it to go into. Other people call the bucket the setula, but that's what it is. So he's got an aspersorium in his hand, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs, and with it they sprinkled the souls that were making their way to God. Now, okay, well, here's what Ratzinger said it meant. Along with the text of the secret, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who later became Pope Benedict XVI, published this whole theological commentary where he, in my opinion, just lies to people. Here's what he said. He said, a careful reading of the text of the so-called third secret to Fatima will probably prove disappointing or surprising after all the speculation that it has stirred. No great mystery is revealed, nor is the future unveiled. Easy for him to say. After explaining the differences between public and private revelations, he cautions people not to see in the message a determined future event. Yeah, he's basically telling people that Rome is going to be destroyed, that the Pope is going to be walking through the streets which are littered with bodies, that he's going to climb up a hill with a cross on it, a mountain of bodies or a mountain covered in bodies, where then he's going to stand underneath the cross, where he's going to be shot with arrows and machine guns that are going to kill him. And I guess the angels above them are now scattering the aspersorium. They're now scattering the blood of the martyrs on the souls of the people that are rising up to heaven. But here's what he says. He says, the purpose of the vision is not to show a film of irrevocably fixed future. Its meaning is exactly the opposite. It is meant to mobilize the forces of change in the right direction. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It means people, this is like a Muslim invasion or an uprising against the church at some future point where they murder all the cardinals and all the people in the church. Therefore, we must totally discount fatalistic explanations of the secret, such as, for example, the claim that the would-be assassin of 13 May 1981 was merely an instrument of the divine plan guided by providence and could not, therefore, have acted freely, or other ideas in circulation. Rather, the vision speaks of dangers and how we might be saved from them. If you're that Turkish guy that shot the Pope, what's he going to do? I mean, once the Pope wanted to talk to him, the Pope would have to forgive you. He's the Pope. I just want to be a fly on the wall where it's like, yes, my son, I'm going to crack in your head, boy. I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. Anyway, so then he goes on and he says, he talks about the symbolic nature of images, concluding part of the secret uses images which Lucia may have seen in devotional books, draw their inspiration from longstanding. So in essence, Cardinal Ratzinger, after all the fuss that's made over Sister Lucia, who later I thought became Sister Bernadetta, but after all this fuss, Ratzinger basically calls her a liar. He then says, well, you just saw a bunch of things from devotional books and you draw inspiration from long-standing intuitions of faith. Yeah. He says, what remains was already evident when we began our reflections on the text of the secret, the exhortation to prayer as the path of salvation for souls, and likewise, no, this is the Pope walking through the ruined streets of Rome amongst bodies with angels above with flaming swords screaming, penance, 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 to bring the bishops and cardinals and the Pope of the Church to justice. So once again, bishops, priests, men and women, religious, in other words, nuns and whatever else, going up a steep mountain, a big cross, and then he's machine gunned. He's shot to death by other people and shot with arrows and whatever else. And this is supposedly the end of the Catholic Church. So in 1960, the Vatican issued this press release stating that it was the most probable the secret would remain forever under absolute seal. Primarily because, once again, penance, penance, penance. You have angels with flaming swords demanding what? Demanding that the Catholic Church be brought to atonement for its sins. Do you think the Catholic Church is going to say that? You think Ratzinger is going to go, oh yeah, we're all a bunch of kid fookers anyway. We're all a bunch of pedophiles. So yeah, vote for us. So the New York Times, yeah, leave it to the New York Times, talk about religion. Their speculation ranged from worldwide nuclear annihilation to deep rifts in the Roman Catholic Church that lead to rival papacies, which, again, really, there is a rival papacy. There is a guy who claims he's the actual pope of the real Catholic Church, and that all other Catholics are primarily Protestants. In fact, even then, I think in 1982, they solved the rift between Catholics and Protestants, and the Lutherans all kind of rejoined the Catholic Church. After the Vatican II Council, the Pope even said, we're all Protestants now, because what they switched is that they switched that the Mass is no longer said in Latin. Remember, Catholic means universal, and Catholic is even predicted as a universal church that would have a single language, which is Latin. This is all predicted as the Church of the Antichrist by Daniel. Look it up. I'm not making this stuff up. Daniel was the one that said that Satan would control the universal church, Catholic. And here's what they changed in Vatican II. They changed the Mass, which everybody used to say in Latin, which was a universal language. They changed the fact that it used to be that the Pope or the priest in the church would have the tabernacle in the front, the holy place, and he would have his back to the audience, or back to the congregation, and he would then be praying upwards towards the curtained area, which is like the Holy of Holies. Well, they changed that around. So now he's at the other side of it, and now he's facing the people, because I guess they don't want to pay for microphones or something. He's facing the people. They don't say the Mass or any of the responses in Latin anymore, which they were supposed to. So, and now they let, the Episcopalians let women be priests and all that. So anyway, the Times reported the revelation on Monday that there were no doomsday predictions has provoked angry reactions from the Portuguese church over the decision to keep the prophecy secret for a half a century. So critics such as Italian journalist and media personality Antonio Socci claim that the 4-page handwritten text of the third secret released by the Vatican in 2000 is not the real secret, or at least not the full secret.